I never thought I would find myself in this situation. I had always considered my marriage to Emily a solid one. We'd been together for over 7 years, and on the surface, everything seemed fine. We had our ups and downs like any couple, but we had built a life together, complete with a cozy home and dreams for the future. I was working hard as a software engineer, while Emily was a marketing manager. We had our routines, our inside jokes, and a shared love for Saturday movie nights that I looked forward to all week. But lately, something felt off. It started with little things, a weird vibe when I'd come home from work, her phone never leaving her side, and the way she jumped to put it face down whenever I walked into the room. I brushed it off at first, attributing it to the stress of her job, but the nagging feeling in my gut wouldn't go away. I had seen the way she'd been dressing up more, putting in extra time at work, and staying late for meetings that I knew didn't exist. One night, I came home unusually early from work because I was feeling under the weather. I opened the door to find the house strangely quiet. Emily's car was in the driveway, and I felt this strange mix of hope and dread. Maybe she was just taking a nap. But as I walked through the living room, I noticed her purse on the table. I picked it up absent-mindedly, intending to put it away when something caught my eye. Her phone buzzed on the counter. I didn't want to snoop. Really, I didn't. But curiosity got the better of me, and I found myself staring at the screen. An unopened message flashed from an unknown number, and before I knew it, I was tapping it open. I still remember the words, "Can't wait to see you tonight, babe. I've missed you." My heart dropped. For a moment, I thought I was going to throw up. I felt this sickening cocktail of anger and betrayal swirl inside me. Who the hell was this babe? I thought I knew my wife. I thought we had something real. I needed to confront her. I couldn't wait any longer. When she finally came home, I was sitting on the couch, arms crossed, trying to maintain my composure. The moment she walked in, I knew she could sense something was off. "Hey babe, you're home early," she chirped, but the excitement in her voice faded when she saw my expression. "Emily, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady but heavy with emotion. She hesitated, the usual confidence melting off her face. "What about?" she asked, though we both knew what I was getting at. "I saw a message on your phone," I replied, watching her face go pale. "Who is he?" Her immediate response was a defensive laugh that made my blood boil. "Oh, come on, Mike. You know how people are. That's just a friend from work. You're being ridiculous." I wanted to scream at her to expose the lie as it dripped from her lips, but I took a deep breath, choosing to keep my cool. "A friend? Is that why you've been acting so distant, or maybe why you've been working late so often?" She feigned innocence, eyes darting around the room like a deer caught in headlights. "I swear, it's nothing. Just a misunderstanding." The excuses kept pouring out. She claimed it was just a coworker who had sent her a flirty message, that I was overreacting, that I should just trust her. I felt my heart shatter. I couldn't comprehend how she could just lie like that, how she could so easily dismiss my pain. In that moment, I was consumed by a storm of emotions: disbelief, rage, and an overwhelming sense of betrayal. The woman I thought I knew wasn't who she pretended to be. The woman who had vowed to love me forever had shattered that promise with a few words sent over a phone. I knew I needed to gather my thoughts, to figure out what my next move would be. It was clear to me now that this was bigger than just a single message. This was about the very foundation of our life together. I was done pretending that everything was fine. This was only the beginning. After that confrontation with Emily, I felt like I was walking through a fog. The initial shock of discovering her infidelity had set off a chain reaction of emotions that were hard to process. I was angry, hurt, and confused all at once. That night, I couldn't sleep. I just lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying our conversation over and over again in my head. The disbelief that she could betray me like this made my stomach churn. The next day, I decided I needed to dig deeper. I thought about what I could do to uncover the truth. I considered the possibility that she might be having an affair. The clues were piling up: the late nights, the secretive phone behavior, the sudden interest in her appearance. I needed evidence, so I started to watch her closely. I followed her as she left for work, and my heart raced with each passing minute. I parked a few blocks away, trying to remain inconspicuous. I watched as she drove to her office, and then my stomach dropped. After a couple of hours of waiting, I saw her car pull out of the lot, but she didn't head home. Instead, she drove to a nearby cafe. I felt a surge of adrenaline. I had to follow her. As I parked and approached the cafe, I felt like I was in a movie, each step heavy with the weight of betrayal. I peered through the window, and my heart sank when I spotted her inside, sitting across from a man I didn't recognize. They were laughing and sharing what seemed like an intimate moment. I couldn't hear their conversation, but the way she leaned in and touched his arm made it painfully clear. This was more than just a friendship. I took a deep breath and stormed in. The bell above the door jingled and both of them looked up in surprise. Emily's eyes went wide, and for a fleeting moment I thought I saw a flicker of guilt. But it was quickly replaced by irritation. "What are you doing here, Mike?" she snapped. "Funny, I was just about to ask you the same thing," I shot back, my voice trembling with a combination of anger and hurt. "Can we talk outside?" she suggested, her tone suddenly shifting. She seemed to realize that we were drawing attention. I nodded sharply and followed her out, my heart pounding in my chest. Once we were outside, I confronted her again. "What's going on, Emily? Is this the guy you've been texting? You're sitting here with him, and I can't help but think it's more than just a friendly coffee break." She rolled her eyes and crossed her arms. "Seriously, you're being ridiculous, Mike. It's just coffee. You're so insecure lately." "Insecure? How can I not be when you're acting like this? You're cheating on me and you're sitting here trying to gaslight me." My voice rose and I could see other patrons glancing our way. "Stop it, you're making a scene," she hissed, but the fight in her eyes was gone. "I told you it's not what it looks like." "Then what is it? What am I supposed to think?" I was desperate for answers. Emily finally broke down, but she didn't confess. Instead, she started to cry. "I just feel trapped, Mike. I didn't plan for this to happen, but I need someone who understands me." Her words cut through me like a knife. "So you found that in another man?" She didn't answer, her silence speaking volumes. I could feel the anger boiling inside me, but I also felt something else, an overwhelming sadness. I had loved this woman, trusted her, and here she was, unraveling everything we had built together. I left her there, standing in that cafe parking lot, feeling both furious and heartbroken. I drove home in a daze, my mind racing with thoughts. I couldn't just sit back and let this happen. I had to take control. That night I made a decision. I was going to hire a divorce lawyer. I needed someone who could fight for me, someone who would ensure that Emily wouldn't walk away with anything. I didn't care about the money. I wanted to make sure she felt the weight of her betrayal. I was done with her lies, and I was done being the victim. The next morning, I began my search for a lawyer. I reached out to a couple of local firms and scheduled consultations. That's when I stumbled upon Jack, a highly respected attorney known for his aggressive tactics. I was drawn to his confidence, and as I sat in his office, I explained everything. "Emily cheated on me, and I want to make sure she gets nothing in this divorce," I told Jack, my voice steady. He nodded, his expression serious. "You're making the right choice. I'll make sure she regrets this." As we laid out a plan, I felt a sense of empowerment for the first time since discovering the affair. Emily had thrown our marriage away, but I wasn't going to let her walk away unscathed. I was ready to fight back, and I was going to make sure she paid for her betrayal. In the following weeks, I threw myself into this new fight for my future. I had a mission now, and I was determined to execute it. In retrospect, I was angry at myself for not seeing the signs sooner, for ignoring my gut instincts. But now I was going to channel that anger into something productive. I wanted to make sure Emily understood the consequences of her actions. Jack, my attorney, became my ally. He was ruthless and sharp, with a no-nonsense attitude that I appreciated. We spent hours going over documents, gathering evidence, and planning our strategy. I gave him everything I had: texts, emails, even social media posts that hinted at the affair. The more I shared, the more determined he became. I felt like I was preparing for battle, and for the first time I felt like I had the upper hand. Meanwhile, Emily's behavior only fueled my resolve. She went about her life as if nothing had happened, as if we were still just a married couple with minor issues. I watched her change tactics. She tried to be affectionate, often bringing me coffee in the mornings or asking me to join her for dinner. It was as if she thought a few sweet gestures could erase the betrayal. One evening, she approached me while I was sitting on the couch, looking through some divorce-related documents. "Mike, can we talk? I feel like we need to discuss everything," she said, her voice softer than usual. "Discuss what, Emily?" "The affair, or how you've been lying to my face." I replied, my tone icy. "I know I messed up," she said, looking genuinely distressed. "But I've been thinking a lot and I want to try to salvage our marriage. Maybe we can go to couples therapy or something." I couldn't believe my ears. Did she think that after everything I would just forgive her and pretend like we could return to normal? "You want to go to therapy after you've been sleeping with my divorce lawyer?" I shot back, disbelief flooding my veins. Her face fell and I could see the realization of her own foolishness wash over her. "It wasn't like that," she exclaimed, but I couldn't take her excuses anymore. "Oh, is that right? Because your friend at the cafe didn't seem like just a friend either. How many more lies are you going to throw my way?" "Mike, please, I messed up. I was confused." "Confused? Is that what you call it when you betray the person who's supported you through everything?" I stood up, my anger boiling over. "You've made your choice, Emily. This isn't about salvaging our marriage anymore. This is about you facing the consequences of your actions." I could see the panic in her eyes as I walked away from her, the air thick with tension. I knew that the time for discussions was over. I was done with the emotional games. There was no turning back, and there was no way I'd allow her to manipulate me into thinking I could forgive her. I finally had my first official meeting with Jack to discuss our next steps. I laid out everything I had, and how Emily was trying to play the victim now, attempting to manipulate me into forgiving her. "I want to go through with this divorce, and I want it to be clear that she gets nothing," I declared. Jack nodded, scribbling notes as I spoke. "Absolutely, Mike. We'll make sure her actions have consequences. I'll file for divorce on grounds of infidelity and emotional distress. We'll also seek to limit her access to any shared assets." The next few days felt surreal. I was living in a whirlwind of legal jargon and paperwork, but oddly, I found a sense of clarity in the chaos. Emily was trying to act as if nothing was wrong, subtly testing the waters. I'd catch her glancing at my phone or asking me about my plans. One evening, as we were sitting silently at the dinner table, I finally broke the silence. "Emily, I'm filing for divorce." She dropped her fork, her mouth agape. "What do you mean? You can't be serious." "I am serious. I've made my decision." Her expression shifted from shock to anger. "You're throwing our marriage away over one mistake. You're being so dramatic." "Dramatic? You're the one who decided to sleep with someone else. I'm just responding to your betrayal," I said firmly, feeling my resolve strengthen. She tried to negotiate. "We can work this out. Let's talk to someone together." "No, Emily, it's too late for that." With that, I gathered my things and walked away, leaving her at the table speechless. I felt a surge of empowerment. I wasn't going to be manipulated anymore. I was finally taking control of my life. As the weeks passed, the divorce proceedings began. I found myself in meetings with Jack, filing documents and preparing for what was to come. Each time I signed a form, it felt like a weight was lifting off my shoulders. I was preparing for the inevitable confrontation during the proceedings, but I was ready. I had the evidence, the legal backing, and a newfound sense of self-worth. Emily might have thought she could play me for a fool, but I was done being the victim. It was time for her to face the music. The day of the court hearing finally arrived, and I felt a mix of anxiety and determination coursing through me. I couldn't shake off the feeling that this was the moment everything would change. I arrived at the courthouse early, the cold marble floors contrasting sharply with the heat of my emotions. I was dressed sharply in a suit. Jack had advised me to present myself well, and I wanted to show Emily that I was serious about this. I waited in the lobby, tapping my foot impatiently as I scanned the room. I spotted couples walking in and out, some holding hands, some whispering to each other earnestly. The sight made my chest tighten. Their familiarity reminded me of what I had lost. Emily had made a choice, and now I was forced to deal with those consequences. When Jack arrived, he greeted me with a reassuring nod. "You ready for this?" he asked, his tone steady but encouraging. "Yeah, let's just get it over with," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. We headed into the courtroom, and I felt my heart racing as I took my seat. The The judge entered and everyone stood up before settling back down. I glanced at Emily, who had arrived just moments after me. She looked nervous, her hands twisting in her lap, and I felt a pang of satisfaction. She was in for a rude awakening today. As the proceedings began, Jack laid out our case methodically, presenting the evidence of Emily's infidelity. He highlighted the texts, the cafe incident, and how her actions had caused me emotional distress. I watched as the judge listened intently, and I could see Emily squirming in her seat. "Your Honor, my client has been deeply hurt by the betrayal of his spouse. He deserves to walk away from this marriage with what he has worked hard for without being punished for her actions," Jack concluded, his voice confident and firm. I watched as the judge turned her attention to Emily, who had been silent up to that point. "Ms. Johnson, do you have anything to say?" Emily took a deep breath, visibly shaking. "Your Honor, I regret the mistakes I made, but this is all so sudden. I don't want our marriage to end. I didn't mean for any of this to happen." Her words, laced with desperation, fell flat. I felt anger bubbling inside me. How dare she pretend to be the victim? Jack interjected, "Your Honor, while my client understands that mistakes happen in relationships, the evidence clearly shows a pattern of deceit on Ms. Johnson's part. We believe it would be unjust to allow her to benefit from her actions." The tension in the room was palpable. I could see the judge contemplating the situation. Then my mind drifted back to the moments Emily and I had shared, the laughter, the love, and the dreams we had built together. It hit me all at once that I was here, fighting for the life I deserved, and I wasn't backing down. As we continued, Jack presented more evidence, including financial documents showing Emily's spending habits and how she had hidden money from me. I watched as Emily's face turned red, her anger boiling over. She finally spoke up, her voice rising. "This is unfair. He's the one who made me feel suffocated. I had to find a way to feel alive." I couldn't believe my ears. "Suffocated? You were the one who chose to betray me. You made that choice." My voice echoed in the courtroom, and everyone turned to look at me. The judge raised her hand to silence me, but I felt emboldened. "I loved her, Your Honor. I supported her through everything, and she threw it all away for a fling. I'm not the one who needs to apologize here." As the hearing continued, I could see the judge's demeanor shifting. She was no longer merely observing, she was engaged. I felt a surge of hope. Maybe, just maybe, I would get the justice I sought. After what felt like hours, the judge finally dismissed us for a short recess. I stepped out into the hallway, needing a moment to breathe. Jack caught up with me. "You did well in there, just stay focused. This is almost over." When we returned to the courtroom, the atmosphere had changed. The judge was ready to give her ruling. As she spoke, I held my breath. "Based on the evidence presented and the testimonies, I find that the actions of Ms. Johnson amount to a significant breach of trust in the marriage. I hereby grant the divorce and rule that Mr. Thompson keeps the shared assets, with no financial obligations to Ms. Johnson." I felt a rush of relief mixed with disbelief. It was finally over. I glanced at Emily, whose face was a mixture of shock and anger. There was no more manipulation left for her. She had lost. As we walked out of the courtroom, I felt lighter, like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I had faced my fears, confronted the betrayal, and come out stronger. Just as I reached the exit, Emily caught up with me, her eyes brimming with tears. "Mike, please, I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to end this way," she pleaded. I turned to her, my heart hardening. "You made your choices, Emily. I won't be your excuse or your backup plan. I hope you find what you're looking for, but just know that you've lost me for good." With that, I walked away, leaving the past behind. The path ahead was uncharted, but I felt a strange sense of freedom. I was ready to reclaim my life and start anew. I had learned one of life's hardest lessons, but I was determined not to let it break me. I was ready to move forward, leaving Emily and her betrayal in the rearview mirror. The days that followed the court ruling felt surreal. I had finally freed myself from the shackles of my marriage, but the emotional aftermath was still a roller coaster. I spent the first few days, in a sort of daze, processing the reality that I was no longer married and that I had stood up for myself in the most difficult situation I had ever faced. I moved back into my apartment, an old place I had kept as a bachelor pad before Emily and I got married. It felt oddly comforting and yet painfully empty. I spent the first week unpacking boxes, sorting through mementos, and deciding what to keep and what to toss. Each item was a reminder of a life that had been, but I was determined to create a new beginning. I started to find solace in small routines, making coffee in the mornings, going for long runs in the evenings, and rediscovering hobbies that I had neglected. I even picked up my guitar again, playing simple melodies that had long been buried under the weight of my marriage. Music had always been my outlet, and I found it healing to express my emotions in this way. But there were still moments when memories of Emily flooded back. I'd hear a song that we used to dance to or see a couple laughing together in a cafe, and a sharp pang of longing would hit me. Despite everything, I still missed the companionship that we once shared. I reminded myself that the pain was part of the healing process, and as time passed, I felt a growing strength within me. Weeks turned into months, and I focused on building my life back up. I took a trip to visit friends in another state, something I hadn't done in years. The laughter and camaraderie reminded me of who I was before Emily, and I felt a sense of liberation. I started to flirt again, exploring that side of myself that had been dormant for so long. During this time, I also began to reflect on my marriage and the lessons I had learned. I realized that I had allowed my sense of self-worth to be tied to Emily. I had believed that our relationship defined me, and when that relationship crumbled, I felt lost. But now I understood that I was not just a husband. I was Mike, an individual with my own dreams and aspirations. However, the reality of Emily's betrayal still nagged at me. I found myself thinking about how she had moved on so quickly, as if our marriage meant nothing to her. It didn't sit well with me. I had fought hard for closure, and I felt that she needed to understand the gravity of her actions. That's when I decided it was time for my final act of closure, something that would not only give me peace, but also serve as a reminder to Emily of the consequences of her choices. I hired a private investigator to gather more information on Emily. I wanted to see how she was coping post-divorce, what her life looked like without me. After a few weeks, I received a report that confirmed my suspicions. She was dating someone new, the same man from the cafe, in fact. They had been seen together in several places, including restaurants, and there were even pictures of them looking quite cozy. I felt a mix of emotions, anger, sadness, and a strange sense of satisfaction. I had wanted to know that she was facing the consequences of her actions, but seeing her happy with someone else stung. I reminded myself that this wasn't about revenge. It was about taking back my narrative. With the information I had gathered, I decided to write her a letter. I poured my heart into it, making sure to articulate my feelings without falling into hatred or bitterness. I wanted her to understand that what she had done had real consequences, and I hoped that this would serve as a wake-up call. I sent the letter, and for the first time in months, I felt like I was finally letting go. I wasn't sending it out of spite. Rather, I wanted her to reflect on what she had lost. I left it at that, feeling a sense of closure wash over me. Days later, I received a text from Emily. It was a short message that simply read, "I got your letter." I didn't respond right away. Part of me wanted to engage to see if she would take responsibility, but I knew that engaging with her again would only reopen wounds that had just begun to heal. After some contemplation, I replied, "I hope it resonated with you." I didn't expect a long conversation, and I didn't get one. She texted back, "It did," and that was the end of it. With that, I felt the last remnants of grief and anger ebb away. I was finally ready to move on completely. I had closed that chapter of my life and opened a new one, one that was filled with possibilities. As time passed, I embraced the idea of dating again. I met new people through friends and online platforms, and while I wasn't rushing into anything serious, I did allow myself to enjoy the fun and excitement of meeting someone new. I wanted to experience the thrill of connection again, with the knowledge that I had grown from my past experiences. Looking back on everything, I realized that this journey had taught me invaluable lessons about self-worth, trust, and resilience. I had faced my darkest moments and emerged stronger. I understood that while relationships could falter, the most important relationship was the one I had with myself. And that was the foundation upon which I would build my future. As the months rolled on, I found myself in a much healthier place. I had embraced my independence, and each day brought new experiences and opportunities. I was learning to navigate this new chapter of my life without the shadows of my past looming over me. I had friends who supported me, hobbies that fulfilled me, and a renewed sense of self. Dating was a new adventure. I met some amazing people, and while not all of my encounters felt like the one, each interaction taught me something valuable. I started to understand that relationships were not just about finding the perfect partner, but about sharing experiences, learning, and growing together. I became more discerning, ensuring that I was open and honest with potential partners from the get-go. But every now and then, the memories of my marriage would surface, like the time I walked into a cafe and saw a couple sitting at a table, their laughter reminiscent of what I once had with Emily. Instead of sadness, I felt gratitude for the lessons learned. Those moments reminded me of my capacity for love, resilience, and growth. I had come out of my marriage with scars, but I had also gained insights that I would carry with me moving forward. One evening, as I was scrolling through social media, I came across a post from Emily. She had shared a photo of her with her new boyfriend, looking happy and carefree. For a brief moment, jealousy flared within me, but I quickly extinguished it. She was living her life, and frankly, I was happy for her. I hoped she was learning from her mistakes and that maybe, just maybe, she would appreciate what she had lost. As time went on, I kept my distance from Emily, allowing ourselves to drift further apart. I had closed the door on that chapter, and I wanted to keep it that way. I didn't harbor any ill will towards her. I simply wanted to focus on my own happiness. Eventually, I started seeing someone special. Her name was Sarah. We met at a mutual friend's party, and our connection was electric. She was funny, intelligent, and shared my love for music and adventure. With Sarah, I felt free to be myself without the baggage of my past weighing heavily on my shoulders. She encouraged me to pursue my passions, and I found myself opening up in ways I hadn't thought possible since the divorce. As our relationship blossomed, I made it a point to communicate openly about my past. I didn't dwell on it, but I didn't shy away from discussing the lessons I learned either. I found that sharing my experiences not only helped me heal, but also created a deeper bond between us. Sarah appreciated my honesty, and it fostered a sense of trust that felt refreshing and necessary. One evening, as we walked hand in hand along the beach, the sun setting in a stunning array of colors, I felt a deep sense of contentment. I had come a long way from the man who had been blindsided by betrayal. I had learned to love myself again, to value my worth, and to seek out relationships that uplifted me. "Mike, you've really changed," Sarah said, looking at me with those sincere eyes. "You seem so much more at peace. I love that about you." I smiled, feeling the warmth of her words wrap around me like a comforting blanket. "Thank you, Sarah. I've learned a lot about myself, about what I want and need in a relationship. I'm grateful for the journey, even if it was painful." She squeezed my hand, and in that moment I knew I was in the right place. I had finally moved beyond the pain of my past, embracing the present and looking forward to a future filled with potential and love. As we continued to walk along the shore, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. I knew that life would continue to throw challenges my way, but I felt equipped to handle whatever came next. I was no longer the man defined by betrayal. I was a survivor, a warrior, and now, someone ready to build a life filled with love and joy. So if there's one piece of advice I could share with anyone going through something similar, it would be this. Don't be afraid to confront the pain, to stand up for yourself, and most importantly, to learn and grow from every experience. Life is too short to dwell in negativity. Embrace the journey, find your strength, and never forget your worth. Your story is not over, it's just beginning.